The Samsung Galaxy S10 offers plenty of hardware upgrades from previous versions, including a new infinity display, new ultrasonic fingerprint scanner, and eventually 5G support. I'm joined here by ZDNet's Larry Dignan and TechRepublic's Bill Detwiler to find out what business buyers should know about the S10 lineup and how it should fit into their mobile device plans. Larry, we'll start with you. First, just give us a breakdown of the different S10 models and the features that business users and enterprise IT departments will be interested in.
Samsung came out with what I would call a very solid Galaxy S10 debut. So there's really, you could argue there's 5 devices because there's this foldable thing that we'll get to at some point in the future. But there's a 5G model, which is another thing that's coming out in the second quarter. And so the ones you can actually buy immediately or pre-order immediately are the S10e, which is a 5.8-inch version, which is interesting because it has all the perks, the One UI. The big sell here is that the screen is smaller. It just fits smaller in your hand. The other enterprise thing they mentioned with Samsung was that there's demand in retail and other areas for basically a flat, small screen sort of device that can plug into Dex. So the 5.8-inch, the S10e kind of fits that bill. So it has, an advanced camera. It has, obviously the faster chips. The screen's really good. It has a lot of perks, but the big sell is that it's a screen size that helps enterprise developers plot apps. It's portable, very compact. And you can put it in, you can plug in a Dex and go. The other selling point for the enterprise, not to mention prosumers, would be the starting price, which is $749. So at that price, it's a pretty good deal, right? And that's the starting spec, which has 128 gig of storage. And, but the thing about Samsung is the starting price is actually a decent price because you can always pop in an SD card. And if you do that, you can get a lot more space, right? So it's the anti-Apple in that you can upgrade your storage without paying a lot extra. So you pop in an SD card and you've got more storage and all that good stuff. So that's the base model or the smallest model. The middle of the road model, which is the S10, is also pretty well specced out. That'll start at, I think it was $849. So that's a decent price tag too. Camera enhancements, there's a bunch of other things. But it's a solid price. It's a good value. And then there's the S10 Plus, which that device can, it's a 6.4-inch device. And that could scale up to, a terabyte in storage, depending on how, fancy you want to get with storage and things like that. The 5G device, which is the S10 5G, that is a 6.7-inch device, which when I looked at it and held it, it's basically the same size as my Note 8. So it doesn't sound as gargantuan as it actually, it looks it's much larger on paper than it actually is in real life. So that's a good option too. The problem is that's going to have a premium price point, and that's coming out in the second quarter. So, and the other issue here is the 5G networks aren't exactly here yet, right? So Samsung's idea here is we're getting a 5G device out here so you can play with it, so you can run pilots for fixed broadband. And, the idea is that the thing's still going to have an all-day battery. I question now how that's going to work in real life because it kind of depends on how you use your phone. But if you have 5G, you might be doing more video calls instead of voice calls. You might behave a lot differently. You might actually use it like a real computer. And that's where the Dex system comes in too. The Dex, which is basically a dock for the phone that turns it into a PC. There were really no new developments with Dex. But what's interesting is these devices give you an excuse to experiment with Dex more. And they are getting enterprise uses in manufacturing, in retail, in a few areas. So these aren't really production things, but Samsung's doing like a slow march So it's pretty interesting development from a business standpoint, and we'll just have to see how it goes. And then the other device that was out there, during the event was the foldable phone, which I still don't know what to do with it. It looks pretty neat. It's just a question of, okay, so you have these 3 solid devices, and it's kind of on you to decide whether you want to hold out for something better, something 5G, wait to see what other 5G phones are out there, and or wait for this foldable thing, which is going to have a price that's going to be ridiculous, but at least it's coming and it looks pretty neat.
Okay, Bill, so building on what Larry was just saying here about Dex, how big of a selling point is Dex likely to be for the corporate customers?
Well, it depends. I really like Dex a lot because the hope is that it will allow you to have one device, use that as a desktop, and use it as a mobile phone. Now, Dex has been around for several years. Samsung had it with the S8, they had it with the S9. Last year, they rolled it out with the tablet, one of their tablets, the S4, the Tab S4, but it's never really fulfilled its promise of being able to let you replace your laptop or your desktop. For people that aren't familiar with Dex, it's a combination of a docking port and software that allows you to connect the device, the phone or the tablet, to that dock and then connect a full-size monitor and a keyboard and a mouse. And it's really handy when you're doing sort of fine control. It also allows you to have multi-window support, so you can have multiple windows open at the same time if you're running multiple apps. And that's kind of what we expect from our laptops and desktops. So with the S10 and Dex, Samsung's really trying to make the phone a thin client, right? So you can actually do most of the computing in the cloud or on the back end and then have the phone be the gateway for that computing. Now, again, I'm not sure that it really gets there. I really like the promise of Dex. I would love to only carry one device. But unless you're an organization that has a specific need, maybe it's for people who are in the field, people working in their cars, field services, if you're just the average sort of office worker, if that's the person that's buying the phone, I'm not sure it makes sense just yet.
All right, and when we talk about business customers, Larry, we'll actually shift back to you for this one. When it comes to picking the right S10 model, and should they just wait for the 5G or the foldable version?
Deciding which model, the only thing I could really definitively say is it's complicated, right? So you have 3 solid devices. I would argue all of them are values. They've covered the screen size thing. I gotta think that enterprises are going to gravitate to the S10 or the S10 Plus, just because it gives their employees more screen to play with, more screens to basically deploy collaboration apps, things like that. I don't see any enterprise going, all right, guys, we're getting you a 5G device, because there's so many unknowns about 5G right now. Like what's the data cost look like? What's the plans look like? Do we really even need it on campus, right? Because the other decision point here was that all the Galaxy devices are going to support the latest Wi-Fi, right? So that Wi-Fi is much faster than the other standards. So it's kind of hard. I mean, it really depends. Like I think if you're an executive, you're probably going to want the 5G one or that foldable thing, right? And if you're CEO of a company, you're probably going to get that if you're an Android, Samsung sort of person. Everybody else, I gotta think you're getting the S10 or S10 Plus. I do think there's going to be things where the 5.8 screen, the S10e, I think that's going to appeal for certain verticals. Because one thing Samsung did talk about was use cases where the screen size is small enough, you can plug into Dex to have like a collaborative experience with a customer. But those larger phone screens, you kind of get into space issues between you and the customer. So the 5.8 screen kind of gets out of the way. And some people just like smaller screens, right? But generally speaking, the decision tree, I think, starts with price, goes to screen size, and then it really becomes a personal question with, how much humble bragging do you want to do about being the first on the block with a 5G device or having a foldable phone?
All right, Larry, thank you so much, and thank you to you, Bill. Of course, stay tuned to ZDNet and TechRepublic for more S10 coverage, including business use cases, product comparisons, cheat sheets, and much more. And to learn about how 5G will transform business, check out ZDNet's 5G special feature and the companion PDF on TechRepublic.